right. Well, Dobry Den, Duja Diatri for doing this video with me. I really appreciate this. I know you are super busy, so let's just jump
Oh, it's
right
okay.
in.
Okay,
This
okay.
is
Yeah, thanks for inviting me back.
Thanks for inviting.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm just so thrilled to see this, and I'm really I don't even know where to start. It's amazing that musicians like you and I mean musicians everywhere. Sometimes we can't do many things in life except for play music, and
Uh-huh.
I think in times like this, a lot of us are really lost of what to do and how to help and how to make sense out of this. And you jumped right in, immediately and started using the kind of like music therapy and the power of music to help people feel better in like these bomb shelters and it's just been really amazing to see your posts and to follow along with this. Uh,
Okay.
I saw a post that you made, and I was hoping you could elaborate on it about how this is like a final exam in Kiev.
Okay. Well, it's interesting that you made there's several comments that we did kind of immediately get to work and get kind of mobilized, really, and it's really mobilization. But it's very important. I've noticed that after we started putting videos on Facebook to show what we do and what that's like and what what our vibe really is during the war and how music sounds in bomb shelters and this. After these initial videos, there's lots of stuff now. I just recently when I was on Facebook and there's a guy in Kharkiv playing some Bach on his cello. Incredible performance and with the destroyed buildings in the background. But there's lots of stuff. Or something else on Facebook, that somebody's making a fortifications, a blog post, and somebody's playing the drums and playing Bon Jovi or something. And there's lots of this stuff, lots of stuff going out, and it's wonderful. And I really feel that this is really a movement of making music. But you have to understand that there's several elements. One is that a lot of people say no music. This is not the time for music. It's even going to the bomb shelters. We're in Kiev in one of the stations, which was at Vasilkiivsky. And they said, no, there's some young children there, and they're trying to sleep, and their parents don't want them to hear, soothing spiritual music. I said, oh, what a shame that children and music during the war don't mix in this idea. Or even yesterday, just coming back from the front, there was a blog post, and they thought it was very strange that this guy with his passport from America, a car with a license plate from England, driving with musical instruments from the front. And they're like, what are you doing? This is very strange. Are you some kind of spy for Biden or Trump or whoever? No, I'm practicing this tradition of Kobzar tradition, and they don't know what that is. I said, okay, I'm making music. I said, if you'd be interested, we could even stop by your blog post and share the tradition, the Kobzar tradition. He said, no, we're too busy. And this is usually what we get from military, is that the society is divided into two parts. You have the civilians and you have the military. And of course, the military taking the guns in the hand, a lot of these kids for the first time, they're very empowered. They feel a certain, vlada, we say in Ukraine, this kind of power, really. And if you're not in the military, then you're not as serious as they are. That's the kind of idea. And a lot of musicians in my circle, even, they're not playing music. They're taking the gun and they're getting into that. And there's lots of photographs where we're standing for our culture, and it's wonderful. But it's kind of a shame that a lot of the musicians who even have repertoire that they could be using now to prepare people to fight, they're not doing that because they're kind of taking an arm or a gun in their hand for the first time in their life. And but in general, it's a great movement. But I just wanted to share, what is unique here. Somebody actually in Texas did an interview recently. Or I don't remember who it was. No, somebody shared a post and said that Jurij trying to help people get their minds off of the war. This is not correct. I'm trying people to, well, not to panic about war and not to be afraid of the war, but you have to understand that what I'm doing, it's not just music making. I mean, I play the piano, I play the drums. I could even play some rock and roll on the drums. That'd be great, right? And I actually even considered, getting my American rock band that we had here in Kiev called Run Through the Jungle. We play Creedence Clearwater Revival. Better run through the jungle. Whoa, don't look back to see. Thought I heard a rumbling calling to my name. 200 million guns loaded. Satan cries, take aim, or Putin cries, take. So, there is this repertoire, and there's the idea that maybe I could do that. But the unique thing is that I'm prepared not just musically, but the tradition that I'm renewing is a very specific Ukrainian tradition called the Kobzar tradition. And the Kobzar tradition is geared specifically, well, I would say it's specifically for keeping Ukraine Ukrainian in a time where we have Eastern Ukraine under Moscow occupation. So these blind wandering minstrels, spiritual singers, they spread the truth about Ukraine. This is the history, this is the culture. This is a Ukraine type of faith, Christian faith of the Orthodox, Ukrainian Orthodox, not Moscow Orthodox, a very different thing. So this tradition was created to be like the glue of Ukraine when we had no nationhood. And Eastern Ukraine hasn't had nation for 3 years. So basically, to bring this tradition back, it's very effective in changing people's orientation. You have all these Ukrainians who think, well, we're Russians, being Ukrainian, it's not really cool. Why would you want to be Ukrainian when you can be a Russian? But playing these songs to them, there was, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, a guy from Kharkiv, he was in Kiev. I said, yes, I'll share. I want to show you, and I sang him an epic tale, which was in a Kharkiv dialect, which existed 100 years ago. And he said, wait a second, I thought Kharkiv was always Russian language. So listening to these types of songs, it brings back maybe on a genetic level who you really are. And this is the design of the creation of such music and the tradition of how to give off music. It's not going on the concert stage. It's a whole different philosophy of spreading this kind of Ukrainianness, this kind of spirit of the Ukrainians. So I'm doing this for my life, really, especially the past 23 years in Ukraine. This is my main work. But people say, Yuri, why are you playing these very strange songs? They're very old. The instruments are very weird. We don't know the Kobz or the turban. Why don't you just, like my boss in New York said, why don't you get an electric guitar and play rock and roll? That'd be more effective, right? But I'm so attracted to the music. And maybe I'm strange, maybe it's weird. But when the war broke out, I know that this is the time for this music to be in this tradition, not just the music, but the actual way of transmitting it. This is the time for it to be put into action. But there's a certain a theory which I have, is that all these things which the Soviets kind of forbade us to do, for instance, to practice Kobzar tradition, the instruments we play, the language we sing in, if we bring back these institutions and these traditions, then maybe we'll become the nation we're supposed to be. So for me doing this during the war, I've noticed this is the most effective time for me to even perform. Because when I perform these songs during, peaceful times, it's nice, it's effective, it's powerful, but it's on a completely different level. And just another thing I want to add, just to finish this thread, is that we have another institution which has also been, completely compromised. It's called not the Kobzar tradition, right? The Kobzar is the music, but the Cossack tradition. Right. And the Cossacks are kind of voluntary freedom fighters who existed in, pre-Muscovite Ukraine. This would be before 1700. And for about, 700 years they existed. But that tradition of Cossacks, of, people volunteering and taking arms and fighting for fighting for Ukraine. Why would you do that? That must be a lost cause. Why don't you fight for Russia or Poland or Turkey? But again, the Soviets and the Russian Empire completely compromised this Eastern Ukrainian tradition. And now we see, especially in the past, month, that there's a new generation of Cossacks. This tradition is being revived. But the most interesting thing for me is I've noticed, depending on who I practice this Kobzar tradition, makes a lot of difference. If I go to the subways like we did today, we sing for people who are not Cossacks. There were some old grannies, there were some young girls who were making paintings. There was some other folks there who were just trying to live and not be bombed. But when I play for them, it's also very effective. But to play for military, right, these new Cossacks, you might say, it's like this tradition of the Kobzar in the repertoire, in the way that the Kobzar can prepare a person for being in a war type situation. You put that with the Cossacks, who are also just now getting on their feet. And I have this kind of theory right now, is that the Kobzar, the revived Kobzar plus the revived Cossack equals a victorious Ukraine. And this is on, again, genetic levels, ideas of traditional music kind of being revived, things which are kept for us. And the last element I want to add is that there's a very spiritual, you might say, providence element to this, where just studying the Kobzar tradition, you understand Stalin didn't leave us a lot. He was very thorough in killing them all, destroying instruments and knowledge how to make instruments, and a lot of information about the Kobzars. But when we try to find recordings, we try to find any kind of notes or anything, we can't ignore the fact that God did not want to let Stalin destroy this tradition. We find, there are actually recordings of the Kobzars from around 1900, and these are recorded on wax cylinders, right? And interesting that, how did Ukraine have wax cylinders, 120 years ago? And it turns out there was a Canadian Ukrainian who he had lots of money. He decided to buy this new technology called the Edison, the wax cylinder recordings, send it to Filaret Kolesa in the Shevchenko Scientific Society in Lviv. And Filaret had the idea, well, what should I record? The first recordings of Ukrainian history. He says, we must record the epic tales, the Dumas. So he gets together with Les Ukrainka and Opanas Lastion and some other folks, and they go into Russian-occupied Eastern Ukraine and are recording these Dumas, thinking that, well, this is the most valuable, but not knowing that in 20 years there would be no Kobzars, and the only recordings of these most, sacred, these are like parables, Jesus's parables. Had we not had these recordings, we would have known how they were sing, and we wouldn't have known the Dumas themselves. So, and there's a lot of other elements, I won't talk about them now, but it's just obvious that God wanted to save this tradition because it's a spiritual tradition. And the Cossack tradition is also spiritual. This is not, macho guys just wanting to, kill Russians. This is a way that this in my idea, this very good culture, this very battered culture that a lot of countries have tried to overtake and enslave. This is our, Ukrainian history over the past, maybe 500 years. So the idea is that God doesn't want us to be destroyed. But the question is, well, why does God put us through this trial and tribulation of 3 years of dealing with Moscow? And the answer is that God does not want us to lose the war. He wants us, after 3 years, to rise up, to take these ideas, of faith in our tradition of who we were, these technologies, right? You have the Bible, that's great. But when you sing the Kobzar tunes, you have a Ukrainian sacred texts, and you put those into place by playing for the Cossacks in the front, and you have something incredibly magical that comes out. And for me, this isn't just kind of me, okay, I'm this, Kobzar guru, I do this. It's I don't consider myself, a great Kobzar or a Kobzar at all, really, but it's my study. So for me, just like the rest of Ukraine, this is education. This is a school. It's a final exam to where if we pass the test, we get our nationality, we get our Ukraine. And to be part of the process, I can't help but be incredibly fulfilled and inspired. Yes, I know. I've never been in a war, and not even, the Muscovites are like, 15 kilometers from where I am now. I should be like crying, right? I should be like under the bed. But when I realized that this work of mine, this life's work, really, me being in Ukraine, what am I doing here? Who is this American living in a village,
Right.
5 kids? But the reason is because this is how I live my life. My philosophy is not looking for money, not looking for, success in America or wherever. I would like to be successful, but what I truly love is when I realize all this work after all these years is not in vain. It's all specifically to have some kind of, everybody wants to do something important in their life. But now, even without the war, I feel, very fulfilled that I play the music I like to play. I'm doing it effectively, but now to be able to really help my country on a spiritual defense without guns, and talk about not just even playing, but even what I say, things that just come out of my mouth. It's like, where do I come up with this philosophy, these ideas? And a lot of these ideas, I'm convinced it's not me. This is how God works through these Kobzars to tell them how to, and what am I talking about? There's a lot of things which are going on which are not necessarily so good. It's good that we're confident now that we know that we'll probably win. But there's a lot of Russian elements that, all Russians are bad. You can imagine, and Ukrainians you can completely understand when you get into, like Nazi type antics, like, rape and just killing women and children. But I can't go along with those things. Even these kind of slogans like Putin is what do they say? He's what he says. Or Ruski korabel ide do pobачення. There's another word they use. For me, I feel this kind of, things which are, how do I say? You might call it it gets into sinful behavior, right? And anger and hate. And part of my repertoire I play is to convince people that that's not where we should go. Let's not go there. Let's keep our anger under control. And a lot of other ideas that people might say, Yuri, are you one of us or are you not one of us? Why are you telling us? Why don't you let us hate these folks? Even myself, I'm telling you, listen, the Russian Empire killed, like many generations. For 300 years, my family could not live in Poltava. My generation is the first one to come home. So I have every reason to hate them as well. But through my work, I've realized that this is not Christian philosophy. It's not spiritual behavior, this foul language and this hate and stuff. So I think that's what the Kobzars' function was to keep the Cossacks from getting out of hand, getting out of control. And it's just a beautiful process, all around. But also with the faith that, I even have certain, just things I absolutely believe in. One is which Kiev will not fall, Ukraine will not fall, Ukraine will have a victorious triumph, and we will have, celebrations. But also certain ideas that God does not want Ukraine to be destroyed by nuclear bombs. It won't happen. Don't worry about that. But we as Ukrainians, we have to pray. We have to believe that God will close our skies, we say. So a lot of, wonderful ideas. And for that reason, I'm very happy. I'm very positive. And tomorrow, if you can imagine, Matt, we have an invitation to go to the front itself.
Wow.
So this is like right on the river, the Irpin River between Kiev and Irpin. So that on one side, we have the Muscovite army. The other side, we have Ukrainian. And I was there 2 days ago. And I was like, wow, this is really the front. I mean, you can see like in the metal gates in the houses, you can see like lots of bullet holes. You can see almost all the glass broken off of most of the houses. You see roofs which dents where Hrad, the hail destroyed the roof in the cars.
Right.
And I'm thinking, well, and that night I had a lot of stomach acid. I don't usually have stomach
Yeah.
acid. There's acid indigestion.
Yeah.
Mortgage on my life. But the feeling is that I'm drawn to the front, and my friends say,
Yeah.
Jurij, where are you going? This is too dangerous. You're gonna get killed. But it's a certain, I don't know, a belief that even where I go and where our group goes, they can't kill us. We have a certain, kind of a heavenly protection, but also where we go and the music we sing, it spreads that protection. And I'm even thinking, like Poltava, a place I go to very often, it hasn't been touched by tanks. My hometown has. Where we've been, the only place is Kharkiv, but even Kharkiv we haven't lost. Places we haven't been, they've fallen to Moscow, Crimea, Donbass, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, or not Zaporizhia fully, but part of it, Kherson.
Yeah.
These are places which I haven't gone. So there's some very interesting ideas which kind of come into my head that actually going on to the front is kind of giving the protection, kind of inspiring the folks there. And I don't want to have like a big head and think that I have something, great to say, but it looks like that to me, that I'm convincing myself and maybe some other people that this music, it's not music, it's the spirit that through music you transfer certain ideas, and people do change, and people do. It's like a switch that changes, and their philosophy changes. So it's a beautiful time, a beautiful time.
First of all, this is just such a terrific explanation and answer. I hope the whole world can hear this. This is just terrific. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're helping.
Where that video, the video you posted a few days ago, with the shelling pretty close to you, was that near Irpin?
Yes. That was right across from Irpin. It's actually called Bilohorodka. I actually lived there. My first child was born. We actually lived in Bilohorodka. But it's interesting in Bilohorodka. This was actually in the time of Kievan Rus in the Middle Ages. There are walls. There are these earthen walls still there from 1,000 years ago, when Kiev would defend itself from the Mongol horde, or I don't know, other hordes. Even the Muscovite horde about 200 years ago would have tried to sack Kiev and would have had to go over those earthen walls from the river Irpin. So this is even tradition. Even the Nazis, Kiev defended itself against the Nazis. So its history is repeating itself. But I tell people that don't worry, we're not going to lose this one. This is the big win of 300 years. Finally, Ukraine has the chance to blossom, and if we're allowed to be free, we're not going to be Ukraine of the Soviet Union or the Soviet regime, and not the Ukraine of the Russian Empire. This will be, just give us 30 years and you'll see that we'll be a completely different nation. Give us 50 years. And now what's happened now is we're completely severing ties to Moscow. This is so important. I've been telling people all along, listen, beware of Moscow. They're saying, no, we these are our brothers. We accept that, we've lived with them. Who can imagine? And it's a premonition, I think, in me that you got to be aware, they may attack us at some point. I knew the war was coming. I had these premonitions. But now that people know, now Ukraine can really grow. And that's what's going to happen over the next, 20, 30 years.
Sure. And
it might be a very, very quick development. I've been here for 23 years. Ukraine is very dynamic. From the first revolution, the second revolution, I call this the third revolution. I don't like calling it a war. It is a war, but the war is the negative stuff. The positive stuff, the spiritual revolution, that's the third revolution. And I've noticed in revolutions, things change incredibly. So after the war, this is not like the second Maidan. This is all Ukraine Maidan. So I expect Ukraine is going to be a nation the world hasn't been able to get to know. Ukraine doesn't even know these things, but it's in our genes. God has been preserving us and hoping that all these things, get genocide, World War I, World War II, the present war, the revolutions, all these things which should have destroyed our nation, God has preserved us. And in our genes, and even myself, I'm thinking, I'm this American guy. Okay. I play rock and roll. I play bass in a jazz band, but in Ukraine, Matt, I start to understand that there's a lot of things that are in me, and it must be from my relatives who are Cossacks, who are spiritual leaders or priests, who are statesmen, who are judges, who are teachers. I have a very serious family of Ukrainians who are made for Ukraine, and I was made for Ukraine. And when I come back to Ukraine from America, it's like I become energized and activated. Where in America, I didn't really make sense. I mean, I did what I could, but here it's like I'm back into my element. And especially during war, when the war broke out, immediately, I think before the war broke out, I made an announcement that we're going to tour all of Ukraine. Because I felt it coming. And once the bombs started falling, we got in the car and immediately drove, out of range. But I started feeling this is not the right thing to do. And I started going to Kiev and looking for gas and going north. And then I started to feel the adrenaline. And when Taras Kompanechenko, I was supposed to have helped him evacuate from Boyarka. At that point, I realized that Kiev is our bastion. It's our fortress. And if Kiev falls, Ukraine might fall. So I decided, no, I'm going to be here in Kiev like I was in each Maidan. I'm going to do what I can. And the question is what I can do. And I ask God every day, where should I go? Today, the question was, where do we go? We didn't have anything arranged. So we went to the subway station. And the subway was great. But I'm being pulled to the front. And something there is there to protect the front, to help the folks protect spiritually Ukraine. I mean, I'm convinced the Muscovites won't cross the river. They can't. They're several days, and we will clean that territory of their war machine. But still, there's a big question, and this is a personal thing. My family, my mom says, Jurij, come back to Raleigh. What are you doing? You're a father of 5 children. Be a father. Don't be a hero. And I tell my mom, listen, I'm afraid that if I do get on the plane, that once I'm in America, Kiev will fall. Ukraine will fall. There will be these things. Now, I don't know. I'm not a prophet, or I don't know the future, but I have a really deep feeling that I don't want to live my life thinking that I failed my big test. I've been preparing my whole life, and it's time to do it. And how can I get on the plane and leave? I mean, this would not be fun. So the idea is just every day in Kiev, like today, ask God, what should I do? Where should I go? And the feeling that he will tell me where to go and what to do. And so tomorrow the answer is to go to the front. But I'm telling my friends, this is a kind of a surprise for them. They didn't expect to come to Kiev. They didn't expect to be here for a month. But they're saying, Jurij, we feel that you are the leader which leads us to the place we need to go. We feel a wonderful inspiration too. So when I told them, listen, I feel I need to go to the front to Bilohorodka. They said, as they always say, we're with you. And I said, but listen, we don't have bulletproof jackets and helmets. I mean, we should. And they said, well, they're very expensive. They're hard to get. So, and this is, I think they call it a leap of faith, or a step of faith. It's something like that. And even without the defenses, I don't believe they can kill me. I mean, I don't want to do something stupid, of course, but it's just like a deep faith. And you read about, if you read David's Psalms, it's all in there. Read the 90th Psalm, that he who goes with God will not be hurt. He will have, angels who carry him, that his feet won't hit the stones, and that, 1,000 to the left and to the right will fall. And I hear these things, and I feel that David, as a Jewish proto-Kobzar, this guy, this little guy who made instruments, he sings, to the harp, to some lute in Jewish harp or something. And writing this spiritual songs, singing the songs, maybe going to the cities singing them. He was a king. Eventually would have done this. So he's kind of like a proto-Kobzar. And a lot of my Ukrainian friends said, no, Jurij, don't get into Jewish stuff. But you can't ignore this. And just looking at Ukraine and understanding biblical history, this is a complete David versus Goliath.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
can't ignore these things.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, quick question, which is, or an observation, which is that it seems that already you mentioned about how quickly this stuff is happening. It seems like a lot of parishes are changing from Moscow Patriarch to Kiev Patriarch pretty quick right now.
Oh, wow, great.
Is that true? Or
I don't know. I haven't heard
oh,
that. I haven't heard that.
yeah,
But I know over the past 7 years it has been happening.
yeah,
And interesting, my idea over these past many years is that it's okay. Let them reform. Let the Moscow Patriarchate do reforms, and maybe But when the war broke out, and you see these paratroopers who are Moscow, so-called priests, and you
yeah,
see that they've been getting guns ready, the diversanti, the saboteurs. That
right,
there's lots of folks tied in with the Moscow Church.
yeah,
I've come to my opinion now. We must prohibit the Moscow Patriarchate by the
yeah,
understanding that it is not a church. It
right,
is a Kremlin
yeah,
agency for work for destroying Ukrainian nationality. That means
correct, yeah,
genocide. Really,
yeah,
a church that deals in genocide is not a church. It is a
right,
KGB or FSB, as they call it now,
yeah,
institution. And when you
yeah,
realize that the main patriarch, as he's called, of the Moscow Church is a former KGB agent and buddy bud of Putler,
yeah,
then
yeah,
how stupid do you have to be to understand that's not a church? They
right,
are pushing Putin's program. It's
right,
a wolf in sheep's clothing.
yeah,
And it's just like in America, they have prohibited the Communist Party. Now in
yeah,
Europe, they say, well, that's not very democratic. You have to let them exist. Well, if they're working against Europe to take over
yeah,
Europe, then how
yeah,
can you allow that? Oh, because it's a party. Well, wake up, Europe. I think
yeah,
America knows the situation.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
and it's time for Ukraine, and Ukraine does know.
yeah,
And it's like I don't know if you certainly seen the Tolkien movies,
yeah,
Return of the
yeah,
King, the Two Towers. A lot of these ideas kind of come into the head. I think Tolkien was really writing about the period between World War II and World War III, and
yeah,
I think that
yeah,
he was writing about Moscow really in the East. But I think it comes into my head where the Rohan king, who was under the spell of Sauron,
mm-hmm,
once Gandalf did the exorcism, and the king came to his senses, and he looked at his advisor. He was ready to cut his head off. I think we have the same situation. We shouldn't
yeah,
cut their heads off. Let's just deport them to Russia, and they can get a job with the KGB or with the Moscow Patriarch, so-called.
yeah,
But it's not.
yeah,
If you get, I mean, in our village in Krechkivka, we have Moscow Church,
yeah,
and again, I don't go there. I try to ignore them. We let them bless our house during the River Jordan festival, where they come with an icon. They say kiss the icon,
yeah,
and I kind of I try to be friends and say, okay, let's try to reform your church. But when they sing during the service a so-called spiritual song, which sings that their capital city is Moscow,
right,
and they're singing this in our village in Ukraine territory, that's what we call treason.
yeah, yeah, you got that
So we're
right,
very
yeah,
sorry. This is not in the interest of our nation or So I'm sorry.
yeah.
We gave them a chance. They blew it. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
yeah, for sure. How many people are with you? It looks like usually like what, three or four others
Five, a
usually?
total of
Five,
five.
five, yeah,
And it's a good group.
yeah,
We don't all play traditional Kobzar music. In fact, I'm the only one.
yeah,
And this is kind of strange. Why don't the other folks do this? I invited everybody, all my friends, the Kiev Guild, the Kharkiv Guild.
hmm,
But it's happened that I'm the only purporter of the tradition, which is fine.
yeah,
Sometimes I have days where I just do my own Kobzaring.
sure,
But I've come to realize that the other musicians, they are my students. They are making instruments. They will at
yeah,
some point play traditional repertoire, hopefully.
yeah,
But because each plays their different repertoire, Oleg plays the violin, his own compositions to his favorite Ukrainian poetry. Tanya plays the bandura, but she plays modern repertoire, kind of like 1960s American protest music, about friends and the sunshine, the summer of love. But then there's Olesa from Dnipro. She plays kind of her own poetry, which she's written even today. She just showed us her lullaby for Putin, so that he goes to sleep forever. It's great. So, and she plays on the guitar, kind of bard stuff. But I've realized with this company, this group, this is the most effective way to kind of spread our word as a group. Because if we were all playing traditional Kobzar music, it wouldn't be so. A lot of people don't like the old stuff. They don't get it. They don't understand it. But somebody will like music that's like hippie music. Another person will like music that's very, kind of war-spirited. Some people just want to hear nice Ukrainian lyrical poetry to the accompaniment of the violin.
Two last quick questions for you. I want to be respectful of your time. The first one is it's a very broad question, which is if someone watching is totally new to Kobzar or Cossacks or topics like this, where is a good starting place for them to begin, like listening or learning? Is there like an album or a book or something that like is a nice introduction?
Well, the best is probably YouTube. On YouTube, there's lots of Kobzar music. Even Cossack music and themes which deal with Cossacks and who the Kossaki were. So on YouTube and Facebook, there's lots of groups that deal with Cossack and Kobzar. Just write that in the search engine.
That brings the last question, which is perfect segue, which is if someone watching this feels inclined to donate or wants to support you and the other musicians, is there a way to do that, or do you have another preference of where they send donations?
Good
curious
question.
what
Good question. Well, basically, this is the first time in my life when people like on Facebook or email are asking me, Yuri, how can we help? We want to give you money. And I've never had this. Now, I would say that we have had kind of a financial need, I guess. I mean, I'm living in a very poor, I'm probably the most poor person in my village, but not anymore because 5 years I've been, practicing this Kobzar tradition everywhere. But basically, I do have a PayPal account, and I'll send you it's basically my name, Yuri_Fedynskyj. At hotmail.com, and that's through PayPal. Then I'll write you that. But I want to tell everybody that it's not a big deal. We actually have money. People are donating. But if somebody really wants to help, then basically that money will go to basically flying to America to be able to come to America and Kobzar to practice the Kobzar tradition there and to present Ukraine's glorious victory over the Moscow horde, and present that through our own ideas and words. And everybody's invited, and we'll come to South Bend or Indianapolis, Chicago, or all three. Please. It'll be a long tour. It'll be about several months, maybe 3 months.
All right. Well, I think I've got everything. This is just amazing.
Excellent,
so thank you so much, and stay safe, and thank you for the work you're doing. It's really huge. So,
and thank you, Matt. Thanks for helping get the word out. It's very important.
Absolutely.
But the best thing, the best moments of the war, the revolution, I say, is like moments like this when, and not just a journalist, somebody yesterday from Al Jazeera, it's kind of Arab CNN basically. It was okay. There was not a lot of problems with language, but she was interested in instruments. She said, you play these instruments, which are similar to ouds, similar to Eastern instruments. And the music you play, it sounds Eastern. It doesn't sound Russian or European. And I said, well, that's what they didn't want. They didn't want Turkey and Ukraine to be divided. We are truly brotherly nations. But to talk to yourself, a musician from, not far from Indianapolis of all places, and a student of Berkeley who loves jazz and bluegrass and serious music. This would be an interview on a different level, and a true joy. So I think it's also a moment of God's providence. He wants these examples of what we're doing for the world to realize this is not to destroy. This is not a Putin, plot to destroy Ukraine. That's what Putin thinks it is. But what it really is, this is everything Ukraine needs to make us bigger, stronger, more better, right? In a Christian sense, for us to rise. And even this is the positive benefit of the war, not the destruction of Mariupol.
Right.
But certain words of truth that the world needs to hear, that it's not those who wield the bombs who are all powerful. It's God, it's love. Love is the true thing which you can defend your nation with. And that's what God wants. So these are the positive benefits of what's going on in Ukraine, and you're helping. You're getting the truth out.
Thank you.
I think
it's like this. It's like this post you shared the other day about, and I saw a few other people share it about why can't the West admit that Ukraine is doing so good? That they're succeeding so well.
Right.
It's true.
They say it's a stalemate. It's not a stalemate. It's just too early on. Give us several weeks, and that's it. And give us several months, and there might not be Russia as we know it. It looks like the Russia will have a revolution too. Finally, they haven't been able to. They're in the past. They're living the Nazi days. The double-headed eagle of Stalin and Hitler was not destroyed. They let Stalin exist, and but I think that's coming to an end. Russia is also opening their eyes, and this is a spiritual nation-building thing which Russians need, just like Ukrainians. When they make a big mistake, like supporting Putin and believing his lies, yes, they're going to pay for it. The blood will be on them and on their children. That's what the nation needed to be humbled and start to build again, and maybe start something like democracy, a free Russia. I believe that Ukraine's position now is to be an example of the Ukrainian older brother to put the younger brother on the right track. We haven't been able to for 300 years because of, this is the fate of our nation. But now the fate has switched, and finally we can help Russia. Not by taking them over and making them our slaves and using their resources, but by showing them how they can do it. So it's a good time to be Ukrainian, and a big honor to do this work. And thank you for sharing these messages. So it's very, very important. Very important.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, it's wonderful to talk to you, and I will see you soon, either here or over there. But I'll definitely be seeing you soon. That's for sure.
And here and there. Let's do it,
man. All right. Well, thank you so much, and have a good night. I will talk to you soon.
Take care, man. Take care.
Right,
God bless, and thank you. Thank you.
Too. Bye.